The reason behind Leclerc's underperformance. The furious heat-of-the-moment reaction of Charles Leclerc for him missing Q3 at the Canadian Grand Prix was not an unexpected thing, but we should be wary of reading too much into such outbursts, as they are not always what they seem, and they are also a normal thing in the sport, with many other drivers practicing such a thing. And in Ferrari's case, it might even be justified, considering how the team performed this year and the last one. In this video, we will take a look at an interesting approach of why Leclerc reacted like he did, and why he wasn't the only one who does that. Edgar Allan Poe said we should be skeptical of what we hear, and even what we see, and these wise words particularly echo the nature of Formula One, where specific team radio conversations and snippets from television interviews can create an illusion of conflict and drama that doesn't fully mirror the actual events. Take, for instance, the final moments of the Spanish Grand Prix, where Max Verstappen was revealed to have ignored calls from his race engineer, Gianpiero Lambiase, not to aim for the fastest lap. Some took this as an indication of strain between the driver and his team, and yet, any suggestion that the relationship between Verstappen and his engineer is anything less than harmonious immediately brings a smile to the Dutch racer's face. The huge difference between the public perception of a non-existent fight and the reality of it, which is a strong private relationship, is not an exclusive situation to Verstappen. It also holds true for Charles Leclerc during the previous weekend's event in Canada, which is what we will talk about today, but they develop in a different way. Ferrari's strategic discussions often become the spotlight of the international television broadcast, especially when the driver's preference and the pit wall's decision appear to be at odds. This is a common occurrence in race, but in Montreal, it boiled down to tyre selection during qualifying. As Q2 began with the track drying quickly, Leclerc, with intermediate tyres on, suggested to the pit wall that he should switch to slicks immediately. However, his request was declined, as he was instructed to complete a safety lap before changing tyres. As the events unfolded and Leclerc failed to advance to Q3, his immense disappointment was predictable. After the session, when approached by the media, he expressed his frustration openly. "We have to be better than that," he said, "and we cannot afford to do those mistakes again. So I'll speak with the team." A few hours after the race, during Ferrari's debrief explaining the reasons behind its decision given the swiftly changing conditions, Leclerc had gained a better grasp of the situation and accepted that his earlier criticism had been unjust. Aside from Alex Albon, who opted for slicks early in Q2, almost everyone else followed Ferrari's approach, as they knew that prematurely ending the intermediate tyre run to switch to slicks risked the rain's potential return, which could result in no recorded lap time. Ferrari's boss, Fred Vasseur, has become accustomed to handling media controversies following comments from one of his drivers, as the situation with Leclerc in Canada wasn't a first-time occurrence. However, Vasseur firmly believes that it's a mistake to evaluate the actual dynamics between the driver and the team based on comments made in the adrenaline-fueled moments immediately after a session. The reaction that they have on Sunday or Saturday when you, the media, jump on them after the session is sometimes complicated, explained Vasseur, as he reflected on the latest drama to play out in the media. On the analysis of the weekend that they, the drivers, are able to do on Monday or Tuesday at the factory, then things have calmed down and we put everything on the table. Our business is always to do what are the pros and what are the cons of the situation and where do we have to improve. The analysis is always very constructive with Charles and Carlos. They are a bit emotional sometimes, but they are focused. The reaction after the race for me is not a perfect picture of the quali or the perfect picture of the news or the situation. And you know that the question in the TV pen is to try to get the guy to say something. What's interesting is that Vasseur's comments about the tendency of the media to exaggerate statements from the TV pen does not imply that everything is entirely perfect between Leclerc and Ferrari, and he doesn't deny that their on-track performance is significantly short of his and his driver's expectations. Furthermore, he acknowledges that underlying Leclerc's comments at times is a very noticeable sense of disappointment regarding the position in which Ferrari finds itself this year. I mean, to be honest, Leclerc is a sportsman, so for him to be annoyed at the Ferrari situation is completely normal, and it's the same for any competitor when they are not at the level they expect to be. So Ferrari now need to build on this and not have a bad reaction, and be honest with themselves. Indeed, it's the gradual progress that Vasseur acknowledges in Ferrari, even if at times it's challenging to discern on the track. The reality behind the Leclerc Leclerc and Ferrari upset following the qualifying session is that the source of frustration may not have been the strategy. Instead, it might have been a sense of disappointment that the immense optimism brewing behind the scenes earlier in the weekend, particularly after an incredibly promising FP2, had fizzled out. Vasseur shared, "When we finished on Friday evening after the debrief, Charles came to me to say it was the best car and the best feeling he had experienced since the season's commencement." These off-stage moments provide a more profound understanding of the actual situation than some sharp remarks broadcast over the team radio. This is a fact well understood even by the likes of Verstappen. From my viewpoint, I see the slow but sure progress Vasseur recognizes within Ferrari, even though it might not always be visible on the track. The real trigger for the post-qualifying fallout between Leclerc and Ferrari might not have been the strategy at all. Rather, it could have been a sense of disappointment that the strong optimism that was present behind the scenes earlier in the weekend, especially after a hopeful FP2, had suddenly deflated. These behind-the-scenes interactions provide a deeper understanding of the true dynamics than any sharply worded comments over the team radio could ever do, a fact that even Verstappen comprehends fully. We can also look at this from another perspective. It might as well be that Leclerc is losing or has lost trust in the strategy team at Ferrari. The pit wall has the most information that theoretically they can make the best call with the occasional input of a driver. A driver on average cannot make the best call from the car as they don't have weather data nor a dozen more screens with tons of data. Their attention is focused on driving, not analyzing the state of the track. Of course, Leclerc should accept the better decision, but unfortunately there is a history of the strategy team completely messing up Leclerc's race. Now there is indecision and doubt whenever they make a call. I hope people don't put this mistake on Leclerc and Ferrari works on rebuilding that trust. But Fred Vasseur is a much more communicative and competent-seeming team boss when it comes to actually managing the drivers than Binotto ever was, as he doesn't hide anything. I feel this team has a bright future, provided they don't swap team bosses yet again. They aren't going to be competing for a championship, at least not yet, but I think the overall restructure of the whole racing team will be a great thing in the future. Despite all of this, Ferrari finished on good positions in Canada and have something to work and build upon in the future. The P4 and P5 in Montreal was their best team race qualification since Azerbaijan this year, but in a way, this could prove to be a much more important race than the one in Baku, because the difference behind the Red Bull was far smaller. Given the frequency at which this team's strategies are often rightfully criticized, Ferrari merits recognition for executing the correct tactical decisions that advance their car's positions, and based on their recent performance, seeing Ferrari attempt an alternative strategy would typically be a clear sign that such a plan was likely to backfire. However, the choice to keep both cars out during the safety car period resulted in a significant advantage in terms of gaining positions. So, unlike last year, we see a clear improvement in a tactical department in Maranello, which is another green flag that the Ferrari caravan might be getting back to the top soon. Also, Ferrari is set to utilize their second allowed filming day at Fiorano this upcoming Tuesday to get an initial understanding of the SF23 car. This car will feature several enhancements, including a new floor, a revised front wing, and new rear brake ducts. But despite the plan to premiere the upgrades at Fiorano, there's uncertainty regarding their introduction at the forthcoming race in Austria. This is due to the implementation of the sprint weekend format, which significantly reduces the practice time available, as teams will only have a single hour of practice on Friday before the qualifying race. Therefore, debuting these upgrades with such limited track time prior to the pole position battle would be risky, so we will see what the Maranello team will decide to do. So what do you guys think? Do you think Ferrari's box decisions will have big impacts on their race performances in the future? Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below, and we will see you next time.